Honourable Mathys.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Dr. Diaz. I'm the next lot, and I'm the nicest one that you're going to have in this ad hoc committee today. Just to start off with, did you read the ad hoc terms of reference? Have you gone through the ad hoc committee, this committee that you're in now? Have you gone through our terms of reference?
Sorry, I did look at them very briefly when they came through, and as I've been explaining to people, it was not helped by the fact that I've had computer problems for the last week, and my home network has disappeared, so I'm having to work between a USB and a tethered data thing. So, but I did see them, and they came through just at the time I was grappling with that, and I read them quickly.
Okay. So I just wanted to, and this is just by the way, Dr. Mary, is that we do have our terms of reference does allow us to appoint a forensic investigator. Okay. So it is something that we can do if the need arises. So just tell us, where were you born?
I was born in England.
You were born in England, and you grew up in England as well, or?
No, I grew up here, actually.
Oh, you grew up here. Okay. Just some clarifications on your qualifications. You said you've got a Master of Social Science degree.
I've got a research master for my research, a cum laude one. I have a social work qualification. I have an honours and masters, and then I've got this doctorate from Rhodes, an honorary doctorate in for my work in human rights. Yeah,
okay, I got you. And then you often...
And a lot of publications.
Okay. And is that how you got the title of professor through your publications?
People call me that, and I would say I'm not a professor. I should have been, because I was just too busy teaching and doing this to finish a degree. But, I mean, it's quite not difficult to finish a PhD, and I've published most of it. So, I mean, people call me that, and they use this term professor often in America if you're an academic at university. But I didn't get the official professorship because I hadn't finished the PhD that would have got me the professorship when I was teaching. Yeah.
Okay. You also indicated that you often assist SAPS officers who have either been illegally arrested or persecuted, as you indicated. Where do you get the funding from?
Okay. No, I haven't had it for years. We had it for 10 years. Professor Zulu and I had it. It was a joint project. It was Natal Monitor, became KZN Monitor, a research project. And we got the funding from Norwegian People's Aid for 10 years, between 1995 and 2005. All very proper, audited in our research codes. And it was given initially for research on the continuing violence, and then Shoba Shabane happened. And the funders agreed to give us money for legal work, and that's how we funded legal representation for victims, families of victims at Shoba Shabane. So I haven't had funding. I mean, I get if I publish stuff in academic journals, which don't get nearly enough time to do as much as I want of, I get funding in my research account that I can use for academic purposes only.
So it was the Norwegian government. Did they approach you, or did you approach them, or did you apply for funding?
Well, somebody who'd been in exile approached us, actually, and they had representatives here at the time. And when they were running around with me some of the time to see what was happening, and then they offered us small funding. But as I said, the funding, they then offered us more after Shoba Shabane, and that allowed us to help people with legal problems if they didn't have legal help. But it stopped in 2005.
Okay, and who was the person that assisted you in facilitating the funding? You said there was someone?
What was his name? Yeah, there was a... It was networked. The person, Paul Zulu knew someone who'd been in exile who was very close to ANC leadership. She's deceased now. She was Doris Kosana, and she'd been fairly well up in it, and she knew the Norwegian People's Aid people. That's how it happened. And they got interested in what was happening during the years of the violence. And I took them around, actually. They had the shock of their lives one day when we got chased out of a shack area that was later on going to be the site of another massacre. We didn't know what all the soldiers would do anyway, and they sort of got the message that maybe there's something going on here and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So you've also indicated to us that you're an expert on policing and policy and the Constitution, particularly around policing. When you send information that you receive, how do you sift through that information to determine that this is the appropriate person or institution or agency to send whatever information that you get to? And do you think that you use the right information forms? For example, when you lodge a complaint to the public protector, they have a process on how and forms that need to be filled out. So just sending an email sometimes does not necessarily amount to it being a formal complaint because there's processes in place.
In the first years of democracy, I would go to the police and they would respond. And that just fell away gradually in the 2000s. And I'm lucky if I get any responses at all. I mean, there's some police that I've at stations that have been helpful. I will sometimes phone about patrols. Generally speaking, written answers are few and far between. You know, they used to be much more. Recently I just passed on the complaint. I wasn't able to evaluate. And it did get investigated, actually. And I was worried because it involved a supposed unregistered. So I do it in different ways. We had no success whatsoever with either the Human Rights Commission or the Public Protector in KZN. But we got the investigation into Gleeblands hostel by just before, I think it was the last report that Advocate Madonsela wrote, because a lawyer with whom I work, who used to be the head of the law department, knew her well. And having the local office having turned us down, she did the investigation. So we've used different channels. And I've often sent stuff on to Parliament. I mean, at one stage, when I did complain to Parliament about torture and the fact IPID was doing nothing about it, it was Advocate Birkman was the chair, and they followed up. They got an undertaking from the national office. They'd investigate. It was about our province. The guy came down here, he needed to see me urgently. I went out my way and he said, look, I quite agree, everything I've followed up looks right. And he got called back the very next day to head office because McBride had just arrived back and I think he wanted a meeting and that was the end of it. So we have had follow-ups in the course of the years to ask answers from, say, in that APID. So different. Yeah.
So why do you think the institutions or agencies that or SAPs in particular, where you normally had a relationship with and they would respond, why do you think they stopped responding to you?
Oh, because everything changed in 2009. I mean, clearly became the National Commissioner. And we had a return to military policing, which should never have happened. I mean, the ANC had taken a very firm decision in 1995 to demilitarize policing. And it was brought back immediately because clearly likes running around in a uniform. And it became shoot to kill. And not only that, but and I'm quoting media reports now, oh gosh, there's this man who was a bodyguard, now he's a brigadier, that we were getting all this, and I was getting reports from people about nepotism. So it started to go down, less and less responses. And we saw that with Gleeblands, for example. There was a crisis there, people were dying all the time. And I was writing to the provincial commissioner then, the woman that was suspended for the World Cup tender, which was signed off by Clearly. He signed it off. He should have been charged, not her. Okay. And she never ever, she once said, oh, let's have a meeting, and then she withdrew. Never replied to anything.
So you pretty much saying that it had more to do with who came into leadership. You don't think it had anything to do with the quality of the information that you were sending or asking about?
No, I don't think so, because I was doing what I've been doing since, I mean, in 1990, there was this big effort from people that we knew were not very nice security police, but it wasn't all this nice, you know, that we're having this change. And I knew they were lying, because at one stage before 1994, I think it was the Vryburg actually, there was a real theory that the police were far to the right of de Klerk and didn't like what he'd done. And there was at one stage, there was even talk about, well, if there's a coup, it's not going to come from the army, who are largely behind de Klerk, but from the police. So there were those tensions, and I think they went out of their way to show, but nothing much changed, actually.
Okay. So I'm curious about how you did not know that you had an option of lodging a complaint with IDEC, given your vast experience.
No, IDEC, you mean?
Yeah, IDEC.
Oh, right. Well, I guess I guess that it didn't, I hadn't thought of looking. I'll be honest with you that I'd tried over and over again to get action from IPID and got absolutely nowhere with anything, even with cases where we produced the medical evidence about the severity of the torture. I mean, so I was kind of, there was IPID, there was, I could have gone to the civilian secretariat, but I've never ever seen much. I've seen a lot of bad laws coming out of that have had to be sent back from the civilian secretariat. One of the things I put in parting was this, in suggestions forward to think about basically, is that there's far too much power in the hands of one person, of the Minister of Police, who, regardless of who the Minister of Police is, because it's the Minister of Police who decides on the head of I mean, now there's a bit of window dressing about, well, let's call for nominations in the new legislation. The Minister of Police is the one who appoints the head of IPID, ultimately. Appoints the civilian secretariat, which is supposed to give it, and they've got civilian secretariats in the different provinces. Because I once said to one of the Director Generals, well, what are they doing if you want us to? Oh, he said, nobody knows what they do. I thought, what an admission. Anyway, we've got the Civilian Secretariat. And, of course, we've got, it's IPID, Civilian Secretariat, Minister of Police, of course. I mean, National Commission, no, well, that's the President. But there's got to be a recommendation somewhere. I think that there's a need, there's too much power over oversight bodies of the police with one pair of hands in the form of the minister. I think there should be more of a parliamentary role, quite honestly, in who becomes heading those particular institutions of IPID and the Civilian Secretariat.
Okay. So in terms of the IDEC, and you're not, so you weren't quite familiar with IDEC.
No, I mean, I thought that they had a more specialized agenda, quite honestly. I was thinking that they were into specific types of corruption. I mean, it gets quite confusing because we've got the SIU running around and we've got all sorts of people who are supposed to be doing it. But, I mean, I'm glad of that suggestion.
Okay. Have you read the terms of reference for the PKTT?
The PKTT. Now, where are all I know is whatever was published about it. Yeah. And it was political killings in KZN. Yeah.
So you haven't, or you didn't, the IMC, have you read their terms of reference?
Sorry,
the IMC, which was the interim ministerial.
I've never seen a report by them. No, I mean, I don't know whether they ever report it to Parliament. I mean, that's something that I could.
Have you tried to access any of those documents?
Well, I looked to see what I looked at the time I wrote that conversation article. I looked to see whatever I could find about their operations, and all I could get, it was a decision and it was media reports, basically.
So when did you conclude that the PKTT was a rogue and unnecessary task team?
Well, it was starting to show that way a couple of years. They'd had 2 years when I wrote that conversation article. They'd withdrawn charges in 3 high-profile cases. It was impossible. It was impossible to assess. You see, someone asked me about how many convictions were there, and I mean, I've scoured media reports. I know that there are cases in court from people that tell me. I've scoured media reports, and there's not many high-profile cases. The high-profile cases get reported in the media, and they used to be even better reported 5 years ago. So you do pick up, and I know, with people, I know more about the killings in the areas. I've never, ever heard about anyone having been convicted. Some of the cases that have happened recently, a couple of them, they said, you see, we're getting these convictions. They've been there for years. They've just dragged on. And I think in at least one of those cases, the work had been done by the provincial team. It was going back that far. In another case, it seemed that, and this may be a problem in other cases, that the man who pulled the trigger had been convicted, but he was telling everybody who would listen to him, apparently, but hang on, I told them who sent me, and they weren't interested in investigating. But again, this is what I want. These were the things that I was hoping that some investigation into them would look at. I mean, I'm talking about, forensic investigators looking at records and things like that.
So about 2 years ago, you'd say that you held the opinion that the PKTT was a rogue.
Yeah, I mean, 3 or 4 years, what was it now? 4 years ago, over that. There was very little to show for it at that stage. Yeah.
And largely your assessment on that and your conclusion on that, is it safe to say that it was based primarily on media reports and then the few people that you have engaged with?
No, it was more than that. I knew some of those cases. I knew the investigators.
So let's say at the moment there's 121 dockets.
Yeah.
So out of that, 1%, 2% on the cases, because you also don't know how many actual cases they have investigated over the years.
I can't make any assessment without a knowledge of what dockets they took. I mean, they took one docket I'm aware of. It's fairly high profile, but it's got nothing to do with politics, as far as I know, and they made a copy of it. Okay. And they've taken other dockets that, as I said, of fraud or corruption. But, I mean, the early cases, I was able to make assessments in some of those cases because I knew the context. I knew what was happening in the area. I would hear from people if there had been arrests. So, but, I mean, basically, there was no evidence. There was nothing much to go on.
Okay.
In terms of information to assess. And that was even up till the last one, which is in 2022, I think.
Okay. So without giving us the details of the cases, more or less how many of the PKTT cases did you have personal knowledge, or you engaged some of the victims personally?
Look, I can't tell you that now. I've only now pulled all those lists up because I didn't know about, the fact that I would come here, put it that way, after the establishment. And when and I dare not mention the name, the commission that shall remain nameless was established, they reached out to me. They wanted information, and then when it was starting, I was told, look, we're never going to get to the task team part until at least the end of this year. I'd sent them the sort of stuff I've sent to you, and I then thought, right, I better go through all those lists. I better scour my update them. Somebody wanted an updated one, I think, because I had the information, I just hadn't processed it. So that's what I was doing when you asked me to come here. And I mean, I put the lists aside. It's a very tedious business because the information is so scarce.
Okay, so we have reports since we had the press conference and the ad hoc committee has convened on reports on how many cases there have been, etc. So you haven't accessed any of that information?
They haven't given me a breakdown. The information I'm looking at...
Yeah, we have that. So
is what... the information I'm looking at is Minister Mgrunu's affidavit, where they are reporting to him, and that's got case numbers. I'm able to in some cases, I'm able to link them because it's the area, it's the cases always opened at stations that where they happened. And because my lists have got the names of people and where they were killed, I'm able to make rough assessments of whether that's a particular case. But I don't have the breakdown of all the dockets they took. And
yeah, we have that.
Do you have that? Well, I mean, I can work on that, but I mean, it'll take a while. I've got to
have a more informed, it would provide a more informed characterization of the PKTT. So let's talk a little bit about destabilizing. It's not a foreign concept that, countries can be destabilized. And the justice system can also be a deliberate, program by forces that don't want to see South Africa advancing or making any developments. And one of the key methods of destabilizing a country, rather, is creating factions within departments and entities, spreading misinformation and disinformation, sort of what we see with AfriForum and what we see with the farm killings. So how do you approach when you get information before you go and you do media briefings and you write reports and you get that? How do you process your information outside of, doing your one-on-one interviews with people to ensure that you're not part of a team, consciously or unconsciously, that's part of destabilizing our justice system?
No, I actually understand the dynamics quite well. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of approaching this. Let's put it academically. I could say to you, what's coming out points to the fact that team was set up to cover up the politicians. That's my hypothesis. Let's say hypothesis. You have to prove me wrong. So, I've got various theories in my mind. Now, KZN is volatile. We are the heart of probably the most powerful long-distance taxi. There's a lot of ones. I mean, what happens in KwaZulu-Natal is the hitmen linked to the taxis will commit a hit and the taxis will get them off to the hostels. And you tell me why we've still got hostels 30 years after democracy.
So anyway,
but that's the way it operates. And of course, we're harbour city.
So I'm just asking, so do you feel that you are confident enough to know that you're not part?
Yes, I do indeed. I've been in this a long time.
And that your activism is not being weaponized.
Well, anything can be weaponized, especially in the social media age.
Because when you make your decisions on whether you're going to go public and share information, that you are conscious that I'm not being weaponized to destabilize.
No, I am.
We had an entire minister who made a decision, and largely his decision, even his statement, he came here and it was based on a report that you gave to him. And whether it was intentional or not, I'm just saying. So that had a ripple effect across the entire country. We actually have a commission now and an ad hoc committee based on a report or a complaint that you have submitted. So I'm asking that at no point have you been approached to be part of a grouping or anything, to be part of something to push a particular agenda?
I want to clarify that I work completely independently. I mean, I still collaborate with Prof. Zulu, but he's teaching postgrad students and writing. We share information, but we don't work formally together. He's not doing violent stuff anymore, but we are very close friends. I am certainly not part of. There have been attempts to say I'm working for some foreign. I've heard all sorts of weird things. I'm a very independent person. I make my own decisions.
No, I understand that. That's why there could be unconsciously. And
you are on my discretionary 5 minutes.
Oh, thank you, because I'm pretty much done. And this is
at 7:15. Your time will expire.
Okay, I'm actually was concluding now. I just think, Chair, as an ad hoc committee, because these PKTT reports is going to keep cropping up, we're also going to keep getting witnesses to say that this is not accurate, etc. And as a committee, I think we should make a decision or consider rather that we ask the Auditor General to audit the PKTT reports over the years. And I think it's going to be because so far we've got reports from the police themselves, and then we have witnesses come and say the information is incorrect, etc. And the most positive thing we can do is have an independent body who is mandated to do that. The AG auditors stats and the crime stats as well. So we can ask also for them to do an audit on this. And I think that will help us as we move forward to deal with information.
I would welcome that. That's what the sort of thing I was looking for, basically.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mathys. So thank you so much, Dr. De Haas. May we please move to Honorable Sols, but before we do that, let me take Honorable Nomvalo.
No, thanks, Chair. Doc, when you were responding to Honorable Mathys about the investigative methodology that you espoused to test the credibility of information that you receive. Well, I didn't hear precisely your response, but what I captured in your response is that you said before the arrival or before the change of leadership, it was easy for you to test information, but it became difficult, and I think you were specific that it became worse after the arrival of General Pegitsele. May you give some brief clarity on that?
Yeah, what I was saying is that I was getting less and less feedback from the police. You know, I've been writing, and I believe in putting things on record. And if I write and I say, well, can you give me a progress report on this case you're investigating, for example? People are asking me to follow it up for you. That type of thing was decreasing. I was getting very few written responses. I mean, I'd carried on phoning police stations to get patrols and trying to get answers about cases. But what was happening after clearly there were two things. First of all, well, there were more because he remilitarized the police, and you got this military ethos in the police. And pardon me, but I tend to, okay, no, I will leave that about the military, but never mind. That was one thing, but it was just getting less accountable from my point of view in getting responses and about what was happening. Look, it did go on. I mean, for example, the Honourable Chair of the Police Portfolio mentioned the Boyson, the organised crime. Now, this is what I did when people came to me and said, these people are seen running around with the rival taxi faction. So I write and I ask about it. I don't get much response, but I did get a bit of a response. It was Olivier. I mean, I have something about a background of Olivier I won't go into here, but he was acting in charge. I think Boyson was the overall command. That's what I said.
Okay. Yeah.
The point is, though, that the point is that he was in charge of the organized crime, and I did.
Doc.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean to be rude, man. I think I get the gist of your response. I have limited time. I still want.
Okay. Sorry. Carry on.
Yes, I still want to pursue this. Now, should I understand you to say that the investigative methodology that you used to apply, you are not applying currently because of the circumstances?
Depends what you mean by it. I mean, I'm getting as much information as I can for anyone who knows anything, but I'm not getting it from the police most of the time. So what can I do?
Remember, Doc, the original question by Honorable Mathys was, how do you test the credibility of information after receiving it? That was the original question. And your reaction was that it was easy for you before the change happened in leadership. It became worse after General Pegitele came in. Now, the question is, does that mean you are no longer using the investigative methodology that you used to use under the then leadership before the arrival of General Pegitele? And if you can be very specific and brief so that the chair doesn't whip me.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. No, I haven't changed. I'm still trying to get information from the police, and I often don't get it. That's what's changed. That's all that's changed. I do my best to get, right now, police are refusing to open a case that a man wants opened against, he's under threat. It's illegal. What do I do? So I go to General...
Apologies, Doc. Really, I don't think you understand my question.
It's the same.
You are talking about getting an information. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about testing the credibility of the information that you have received. Those are two separate things. Yeah. Getting an information and testing it after receiving it are two separate things. The question was, how do you test the credibility of information that you receive from informants after receiving it?
I do my best. I still use the same methodology. I do my best. What I was doing before, asking answers from the police that don't give it to me, that's what's changed.
So if you receive an information from the police, then you ask for answers from them. From the same police, is that the methodology that we should understand you to be using?
Look, what I'm saying is a lot of the information I supplied in those case studies were not the ones that are in the factual letters, the letters I sent to Parliament and the Minister. That information came not from the police, it came the people, apart from a few investigators who might have been involved at the cases, right. But that's first-hand information from people who are caught up in these investigations, who are ordinary people in communities. But this applies to everybody, not just the PKTT.
Yeah, no, the chair
also trying to do it for any victims.
The chair has indicated that I've actually run out of time. Lastly, did you subject this information to the same process, the one that is contained in your statement? That is my last question.
Well, if the same process is trying to get information, no, I didn't go to the police because I was not... I didn't go to police management because I wasn't even getting replies from Mkhwanazi when I was sending him letters, let alone Masemola. So I didn't bother because these were the police under their command. So what did I do? But now I know I can try the independent directorate as well, perhaps.
Thank you so much. Honorable Sols.